Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm Revel Shorty, and I was going to review something at the tail end of last week. I totally ran out of time. I do apologise, but I'm right back at it with Bear Pirate Viking Queen, or Bear Pirate Viking Queen, or Bear Pirate Viking Queen. The lack of punctuation in this one does make it a slightly unusual title, but it turns out it's actually quite accurate because it's a story about a bear, a pirate, a Viking, and a queen. Or at least I think it is. It could be, should be, might be. The bear might not be real. The Viking almost certainly is. And to answer a question somebody's already asked me, it's quite an authentic Viking, but also supernatural, potentially. So you don't have to worry too much about realism in this one. Which leads me to my first kind of, if I'm going to give it a gripe, it's going to be a very small one. Let's lay it out straight to begin with. I'm not a big fan of the term magical realism. I think it's usually used by people who want to write fantasy, but don't want to write for the people who want to read fantasy. They want to get put in the fiction section of Waterstones instead of the sci-fi and fantasy bit, so they call it magical realism. There's a certain degree of that in this story, but it is subtle and also open to interpretation. And I personally think of it kind of literary fantasy instead. And it is very literary. It is a fantastic take on an awful lot of things. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what all these things are, because that would spoil the comic book. And also because part of the enjoyment for me was playing around with the idea of what was real and what wasn't. I've reminded Life of Pi whether or not that tiger is real. Don't worry, no spoils. The tiger's totally real, it's fine. In this one, it's whether or not the bear is real, I suppose. Maybe. Maybe it just is. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. But I spent a significant part in this comic book thinking, yeah, the bear's not really him. Sorry, the bear's not really the bear itself. The bear is just an aspect of him that is externalised because he's in an awful lot of danger and going through trauma, and he's also almost drowned after being attacked on his ship, and which turns him into a pirate. So hence, bear and pirate. The Queen doesn't really turn up, really in this comic book, I suppose. Technically, the Queen of England is an overarching idea that encompasses quite a lot of it. And when the Viking turns up, yes, it does feel kind of weird and unusual that the Viking would be there at this time period, and it also appears to be supernatural in some degree. So it leads this idea of, what exactly is it that we're seeing? What is real, what isn't? How much of this is imagined by the characters in there? How much can we trust the narrator? And one of the overarching story points of it is that the sea, which is an absolute character in this comic book, turns people mad. This comes up repeatedly through the comic book and also in subtext in what we're experiencing, which makes me think that the point is that we don't know what's going on. We are entitled to interpret art as we always should do. My particular interpretation is the bear is the only real thing there, and it's living through some kind of weird haze of memories, seeing how its entire environment is destroyed as a result of colonialism, capitalism, and greed. But that's a stretch. I'll admit it's a stretch, but I'm okay with it because the comic book invites you to do it, and I think that's fantastic. Not just that, but it's also a really well-read action-adventure story. We start off in a very, very tense situation, and the writer, Sean Lewis, managed to keep tension throughout the entire comic book. Not through the same way. Sometimes it's because there's a heist going on, we don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's also a very dangerous thing. Sometimes it's because we encounter somebody who has been driven insensate by the sea, and he's telling stories and he's trying to work out exactly what is true or not. And then the Viking turns up, and he gets all hugely tense and dramatic and violent again. It's also a really good character study of the pirate. It starts from his POV and runs that way throughout, and we get a genuine sense of who he is, and the helplessness of the choices that have been thrust upon him and the life he has to live, and how instead of just rolling with these punches and realising that stuff is beyond his control, he instead leans into the horror of it all and figures, well, if I don't have any control over things that I'm doing, I might as well do the worst things I can. All of which are fantastic, fascinating ideas, and thankfully, it looks beautiful at the same time. The artist, Jonathan Marks Banavaccia, and I apologise if I pronounced that surname, is spectacular. First time I saw this artwork, it reminded me of the first time I read The Complete Moon Shadow, whereas that uses softness, sci-fi tricks to evoke a world and a passion to it. This is way darker. It uses negative space really effectively, as well as really heavily leaning into darkness and shadow. It is crisp and clipped when it needs to, showing off a complete mastery of the form, but also allows itself to be sloppy and leave you to interpret what's going on. It lets the watercolour over ink drip out into places you shouldn't expect it, but then also completely maintains the form and guttering where it's necessary to add to what's going on. It is a genuine work of art, and as one final note to say, because I also really going to tell you want to go and buy it, this is a huge comic book. You get a lot of bang for your buck here, and it's only $5 or £4.40 if you're in the UK. So you should totally check it out if you're lucky enough to have yours still has any. We only got sent one out of everything we ordered. This is the one copy we've got. Your store might already be out. but go and grab it if you can. That's it for me for now, though. I've got a whole bunch more reviews this week. Literally too much has come out this week. I'm not going to be able to review them all, and it's free comic book day on Saturday, so I've got that to worry about. Until I see you all again, though, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.